capacity of the Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchains were? Oops. Well, to figure that out, we need to do one more thing. We need to see the size of that transaction. So if we're looking at tracing a piece of fruit, we can imagine that that's going to be a pretty small transactional record. We may have a little bit of metadata like the farmer's certification, and the various dates that will be tracked along this record's journey. So let's just say for all of our intents and purposes here that one transaction equals 20 kilobytes. So we now know that our transactional load is, what is it, Kevin? Or anyone else? If we need to do 0.52 transactions per second, and one transaction is 20 kilobytes, we're looking for kilobytes per second. We only have 10.4 kilobytes per second. And if we remembered back to our previous session, Bitcoin can handle 10 megabytes per block. So we are more than fitting into any public blockchain solution with this agricultural supply chain solution for Easter Island. Now, this is cool, but we have to remember we can't apply this to out there to any community because we run into our bandwidth limitations. So I hope this has helped you guys figure out how we need to consider closed ecosystems when we're looking at supply chain solutions today. We still have 2 more questions though. So get this a little smaller for us. How would you govern a blockchain system for this use case, Kevin? Who would decide who gets to update and change the rules of this system? Would it be the grocers? Would it be the customers? Would it be the farmers? Would it be a merit-based system where, depending on the decision, that determines who gets to participate? Let's look at an example of a scenario when we would need to update the rules. Let's say Easter Island passes a new organic certification, and we need to change the consensus rules around those types of transactions. So who do you think should have a say in how this new organic certification gets applied in the rules of the blockchain? Any ideas?
I'm still thinking.
Okay. It probably wouldn't make sense for the farmers to be able to decide on those rules, because a bad acting farmer could theoretically shift the rules in their favor so that they could skip over some things. Now, the customers definitely have the interests of the network in mind, because they want to make sure that the organic certification that just was passed gets applied to the blockchain. So in that light, we can kind of see that if we were voting on a governance change to the system that involved this new organic certification, we would probably want the people who are consuming that produce to vote on that rule change. Would you agree?
So yeah, so it will be the customer.
Now, do you think there would be other scenarios when the customer shouldn't vote and maybe the farmer should?
Well, I was thinking what you just said, like, for example, the farmer being the bad actor. What about the customer being the bad actor?
Exactly.
What will be...
You want to try and think of a scenario where the customer could be the bad actor? Well, let's think. What about complaints? There could be various ramifications for complaining that a piece of produce didn't meet the standards on the chain. But the punishment for failing to meet those standards, a bad acting consumer could have an incentive to put a farm out of business or put a grocery store out of business. So deciding on the punishment, so to speak, that may be an opportunity for a consumer to be a bad actor. So without sticking too long on that idea, I think it's safe to say that this would best be served as a merit-based or a meritocratic rather, governance system. Would you agree, Kevin?
Yes.
Only the people who are relevant to the decision get to vote on it?
Agree.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Now, did you think about the idea of a token for this when you were brainstorming this? I know it was quick. Had you gotten that far? No? Okay.
No.
Well, let's think about it. Is there any either security or new utility that we could create by introducing a currency specifically for this system? If we had our own currency and people were only purchasing certified produce or certified agriculture using an on-chain currency, would there be any benefit to that we can think of? I certainly can't think of one. And if we look at this in the real world scenario, people are already using their money to buy produce at the store. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to introduce a new currency if all we're looking to do is to secure things. If we were looking to exchange things, certainly. But because we're talking about produce that has a predefined and pre-existing point of sale, and that's not really our goal here, I think that it would be safe to say that this is not a viable use case for, or there is no need for a token in this system. Okay. Now, we haven't touched on how we're going to support the infrastructure costs, but I want to leave these as our four basic kind of or five basic sets of criteria that we have here for this solution. So Kevin, as we've gone through this, have you had any other thoughts that you want to jot down here that we've missed, or anything else that you want to add to this before we look at another one? And then we're going to come back to this, don't worry.
Nope. No, actually, thank you for make that so clear to me.
I'm glad it is clear.
Yeah, because my brainstorm definitely didn't work this morning.
It's definitely hard to brainstorm on your own with a new concept, so I don't blame you. But thank you for sharing, Kevin. And we're going to look at these in a second once we get all of these down on paper. Now, just so I can manage our timing here, Alex, I know you have an idea, but are there any other participants here that brought a use case idea to share today? solar energy, people be able to sell extra energy from solar plates. Interesting one. So Wanya, I definitely would love to do that one with you. Alex, I know we already talked about you. Are you itching to go next, or do you, or should we do Wanya's next? What do you guys think? Wanya, you already teased us with that, so let's go ahead and do yours. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this for Alex. And just so everyone is clear, I've only seen 3 of you guys suggest one. So if there is, oh, Mila just dropped in here too. So it looks like we have four examples to look at. So we'll try to get through all of these today. More messages coming in. Power ledger, right? Well, Wanya, let's talk about that one, because that's a pretty cool application of blockchain, I think, especially for those of us who like clean energy. You know what I just forgot though? We forgot to name this. So this is by Kevin M, and we'll call this supply chain for self. We'll say SS communities, and you guys know that means self-sufficient. Okay, Wanya, let's try yours next. If you have a microphone that works, that would be awesome. But if you just want to stick to your messaging, that's fine too. So the nature of the idea is to enable people to sell extra energy from solar plates. Okay, we'll put that here. Call it surplus energy. We'll say surplus from collected solar energy. What makes this innovative? Wanya, maybe you could tell us if there isn't a specific way that it's unique from Power Ledger. Maybe you could tell us what was interesting to you about Power Ledger, what you particularly liked about the solution. And for those of you who don't know, if you want to check it out now, feel free. But Power Ledger is essentially attempting to do what Wanya suggested for not only for solar energy, but for any energy that is generated and able to be traded on a grid, which is most energy sources today. Clean energy, low cost. So, Wanya, are you saying that what was interesting to you about Power Ledger is you can get clean energy at a low cost, and even maybe lower cost than the energy provided on the grid? Okay, awesome. So let's say purchase clean energy conveniently cost of, we'll say, grid supplied power. So is there anything else interesting about that, Wanya, to you? Thinking about freeing people from dependence on an energy supplier may not be valuable to us in our countries, but we can certainly imagine how not depending on your country or any entity for electricity could certainly be a benefit to people. Democratizes energy markets, exactly. And what this really does is it enables anyone to participate in this, call it energy economy, at whatever size and scale they wish. You don't have to be a massive conglomerate with billions of dollars and a large footprint in order to sell and profit from energy, which is a really pretty cool concept. Removes monopolies, exactly. I'll put these in here as notes too, in case you guys are jotting down. Democratizes energy, fights back monopolies, we could say. Cool. So Wanya, did you get anywhere with trying to calculate what the transactional load of a network would be like this, or get anywhere in reading about how Power Ledger's doing it? So you say you're from a place with 2,400 hours per year of sun. Okay. What other factors will we consider when we look at the transactions for this that are required to store on a blockchain? What are we looking to protect or secure? What role does a blockchain play in this? Okay, if you just started, we can figure this out together. So we're not necessarily looking to protect the generation of energy. We don't need to secure that process. That's already happening just fine with today's solar technology. But what we're really securing is the exchange, right? The monetary exchange of money for energy. And the blockchain aims in this solution to provide security so that the person transacting knows that it is receiving energy in a way that meets certain standards that are going to make it usable to me. I don't want to receive energy in a format or in a capacity that I have to jump through hoops in order to use. So the blockchain is really a means of allowing people to exchange in a free market without necessarily knowing who they're buying energy from. So if we look at that, we could say the transactions on the blockchain, in order to figure out what our potential load may be, we need to look at how many people would be trading amounts of energy per day. So I'm sure there aren't any energy markets experts out there or grid analysis experts out there, but the way energy markets work is we have surpluses of supply and surpluses of demand. If you wake up in the morning and you have 4 or 5 people in your house and one's running the toaster and one's running the hair dryer and one's running the dishwasher, that's going to be a surplus of demand on your energy load. At the same time, when everyone's at work or everyone's sleeping, we have a surplus. So let's just say, for all intents and purposes, that we're exchanging, because we have, say, 2 to 3 surpluses and 2 to 3 significant periods of demand in the day. Let's say that we have, call it 8 energy transactions per household per day. And that's to either share the excess or to receive someone else's excess to fulfill our surplus of demand. So let's say we have 8 transactions per household per day. So Fateh, you point out kilowatt hours. Now, since we're not actually using the blockchain to transmit energy, that's still done using the standard grid infrastructure that we have today. But the kilowatt hours does apply to the transaction when we look at the transaction size. The more energy we need to transfer, inevitably, a larger amount of energy being transferred is going to have more data or more information associated with it. So we see that if we're trading a larger amount of energy, our transactions are going to be slightly bigger because of that increase in metadata. But again, we're really just looking to record the safe exchange. And again, we have certain compliance standards and other standards that we need to make sure that the energy being traded is is going to fit for the demand's requirements. So let's just chalk that up and say that these transactions are slightly bigger than our Mango transactions because of these certifications and compliance requirements. So let's say that each of these energy exchanges is 250 kilobytes per day. I mean, per transaction. Now, Wanya, this would be a public blockchain solution, I'm sure. So what is our total addressable market for a solar energy trading system? Do we have a rough idea of how many households use solar energy today?
This is one of those Google or Microsoft interview questions.
A lot of these things are resembling interview questions. You're right, Mark.
It's like, how many gas stations are there in the United States? It's the same thing. How many solar paneled houses are there in the United States, or in the world, or in Canada?
Well, let's say we have 7 billion people in the world. Let's say there are 1 billion households. Not everyone has a house. People live in families. That's a rough estimate. And solar power is popular, but certainly not in every market, and it's not popular in every market.
You could just look at the global power consumption and the distribution of different sources and where the solar is in percentage.
Oh, good God. You can't do that. That uses Google. You're cheating now. The interviewer will not be happy.
So we had 1 billion households. Let's say, for this example's sake, that 8% of them are participating in solar power generation. So 8% of 1 billion is 80 million. So we have 80 million households in our total addressable market. Let's look at, since we're not going to be operating this at full scale right off the bat, let's target 10%. Let's target 5% of that. Let's target 1% of that, which gives us 800,000. So if we have 800,000 households exchanging solar energy each day, and we have an average of 8 transactions per household, that gets us back up to 6.4 million. Transactions per day. Now let's do that same calculation to get us back down to 2 seconds. We've got 6.4 million. Divided by 24, divided by 60, divided by 60. So we're looking at 74 transactions per second. Now, what's the last step we need to do here, Wanya, to figure out our transactional load? Remember, if our bandwidth limitation is concerned with how much data is being transmitted in any given transfer, we're not looking at the number of transactions per second, but we also need to be concerned with the size of those transactions so we can get an actual amount of data. So if we have our 74 transactions per second, what do we need to do next, Wanya? Right, multiply by 250, because that is our size of our transactions right here, which gets us about 18,500 kilobytes. So let's bring that down to megabytes. We've got 18.5 megabytes per second. Now, Mark, since you're here, remind me, I don't have my slide in front of me. Bitcoin transaction.
7 per second.
7 megabytes per second.
No, 7 transactions per second. Oh, you're talking about the block size.
I'm talking about block size.
Ah, 2 meg. Wow, 1.6, I think.
2 meg over 10 minutes. That's right. So we're looking at Bitcoin blockchain has about a capacity of 200 kilobytes per second. So we can see we are way over the capacity of the Bitcoin public blockchain. Now, there are solutions out there that are approaching this transactional capacity, but we have to remember that we're only addressing here 1% of our total addressable market. So off the bat, this solution doesn't seem like it's viable for a blockchain. And I would be curious to know how PowerLedger is intending to overcome this issue. It's easy to design a proposed solution for something like this, but unless we really consider the actual scenario of how this platform will be used, how often people are transacting and exchanging energy per day, we really run into this major problem.
Do you have to post all the real-time transactions in real time, or do you post them collectively once a day?
That's a good question. I would think it would be important if the energy I purchase is going right into my household, I would want to know right when I receive it.
But does that have to be a blockchain function, or is that just a piece of software that says you're getting energy and we'll be recording it on the blockchain when your billing period is up in the next 8 hours or 17 hours or whatever? I mean, this is what you think. This is what the kind of thing you have to go through when you're looking at blockchain analysis. Is there a different way to package your transactions so that you can fit within the parameters possible?
Right. But even still in that scenario, wouldn't that open up an opportunity for a bad actor to come in and manipulate that software?
Only for a day. The manipulation would be discovered as soon as the next transaction happened.
Right.
And I don't think people are that concerned about real-time pricing. No one gets real-time pricing today. They get it at the end of the
true.
month.
I think we'll have to walk a couple of steps back here.
Okay, you can't say we're going to go for a walk and then not start walking.
We'll just go back and operate under the assumptions of the standard Bitcoin block size.
Right. Yeah, that is a good example of the questions we need to ask. But since we're already coming up on the hour and I want to get through the other ideas, let's keep moving on this one. So how would we govern such a system, Wanya? Did you have any ideas or thoughts around how the governance of a clean energy trading blockchain network might work? And again, when we're talking about governance, we're really looking at who gets to decide how, when, and what updates are made to the system. All the participants equally, or will all participants get to vote on all decisions? What about determining which energies are deemed clean? If there was a suggestion to introduce nuclear power into the market, who should get to vote on whether or not that gets approved? Should it be just the nodes, the people supporting the infrastructure? Should it be people trading energy? Or should there be other people involved in voting too? Definitely the nodes to support. And we could argue that we'd want to include other participants too in that decision. So in that example, this may be a system where we could have a more liquid democratic form of governance rather than the meritocratic one that we looked at previously. So we could call this liquid on-chain governance. Now, what about a token? Does it make sense for there to be a token in such a system? Is there any utility or added security that we can provide if we were to conduct the actual currency exchange on the blockchain as well? If we look back to our previous example, when we were looking at agricultural supply chain, no token, why not? How would I exchange ownership of energy and exchange money for that? How would I do that on a blockchain without the actual currency being there? I think you're on the right track, Alex. I wouldn't say that we need them. I'm sure there is a way that we could work around that and make it work. But this is a scenario where, because we are using a blockchain to exchange assets and exchange value, it does make sense for us to have a token in place. Now, this is for everyone, since Wanya, you hadn't gotten past the token piece. Would it make sense for this to be an inflationary or a deflationary currency? And let's remember, with an inflationary currency, the supply of currency grows as the economy does. So in this case, the more people who are trading energy, more energy being traded, currency would be introduced to drive that economic activity. Deflationary is the opposite. As economic growth happens, the supply doesn't change. Just the value grows proportionally with the economy. So when we have a deflationary currency, the value of the currency grows proportionally with the economy. With an inflationary currency, the supply grows proportionally with the economy. Which one do we think makes sense here? Alexander says inflationary. Wanya, would you agree with Alex, or do you think otherwise? Right, because as we remember, one of the values of an inflationary currency is that it encourages people to transact, and in a transaction-driven system, we wouldn't want to incentivize people to do anything else. So I think it makes sense for an inflationary currency here. Okay. I think this has been a good, brief but diligent exploration into this use case. Again, we have Power Ledger, which is a project out there doing this. If you guys want to dig into more of the details of a use case like this. And Wanya, thank you for volunteering to share this. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to your idea or questions that you had before we move on to the next one? Okay, perfect. All right, so I think we had two more. Alex, I know we had yours, and then I know a second one came in here, but we've lost it. Since yours is right here, Alex, let's start with donation and fundraising. What's the nature of that idea? What problem in donation or fundraising are you looking to solve?
Can you hear me? Hello?
It's a little faint. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So the point is, like when they collect money, sometimes it's difficult to track them for fundraising, for donations, for when they put them in the pool, even for investments.
Right.
Like,
so
let's say I wanna know where my money is going to, and it's, you know, and sometimes for the purpose of security and for the purpose just in like people, the middlemen who feel free to operate, you know, no pressure and everything. So they hide this information, right? But it would be interesting to know. So
right.
The point is to track money, either it's for donation or for investments or fundraising.
So track money, right? Could we even say that the point is to track the use of funds?
Yes.
Once it is exchanged? We're not looking to track all money in the world. We're looking to track the use of it in certain scenarios. So let's say use of funds in specific exchanges.
I have
like
another
donations and fundraising. Say again?
I have a few ideas related to accounting, like also inventory. It's some kind of similar, you know, when we track those shipments and everything. But yeah, we'll do this the donation.
Okay, let's start with this one. If we have time, we can do the other. So what makes this innovative, and what role does the blockchain play in this idea?
Like before, it was mostly impossible to track those money because they put them in the pool, and that's it. We lose the we lose the track.
So tracking funds previously was really based on trust.
Yes.
There's no provability.
Well, so some people could know, but not all, and it wasn't always publicly available, right?
Right. So we could say it was limited in availability and based on trust. It was not provable unless we have a very sophisticated and integrated system with our government. But I don't think that we can assume that for all donations out there. Okay, so what's different about the blockchain solution is that the solution enables donations, investments, and expenditures even to be tracked within the confines of use of funds tracking for that specific case. So for example, if I donate money to the ASPCA and that goes to the doctor's office for vaccines, we're not going to track where the funds go after it goes to the doctor's office. We're going to trust that the money was spent on vaccines there. So
I hope so.
Say use of funds tracking within reasonable context.
Yes. Until the NSA gets their hands on
it. Right. Okay. So what about the transactional side? Did you explore this math, Alex, at all?
Okay, how we can measure it?
right?
Well, not really. Not really. A second.
Let's just look at a market. Let's look at the Canadian market, for example. How many donation campaigns, fundraisers, investment rounds, how many I guess campaigns do we think that exist in Canada at any one point in time?
Okay,
and we can ballpark this.
I have one particular event which is related to the fundraising. You know, Over the Edge company.
Okay.
Do you know them? Oh, no, really.
Over the Edge? I don't think I do.
Okay. That's a Canadian, but they have lots of events in the US.
Okay, so do you want to look at this solution in the context or
and they
for that company?
Yeah, and they listed. Yeah, we can do like for this company.
Okay. So do you have any? Do they have any information on users or campaigns or amount raised even?
What they're saying, our average event raises over $100,000 within an average of only 65 participants.
Okay, we may not need that, but I'll jot it down. Participants.
So one event, 65 participants, and yes.
So we have 65 participants per event. Do we have anything about the frequency of events? How many they have going on at it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you. I just need to calculate. It's on their website. Okay, they're saying like over 250 events.
Okay.
Around the globe.
In history or current?
Oh, it's a. I think it's a current. Every year.
Okay, so let's say 250. Sorry.
No, it doesn't look like on this map. It doesn't look like 250. Okay, what it says here. Okay, 71 entities. Entries.
Okay.
71. So for 2020, because the period was a little bit short. It's going to be short this year. So 71 on there.
Okay, so could we say 100 per year on average?
Yeah, probably yes.
Okay. So we have 100 events per year. We have 65 participants per event. So we have, do you think it's safe to assume one transaction per participant, Alex?
Oh yeah.
For this company?
Yeah. That's for sure. But
so
the amount will be different.
Right. But the amount being different doesn't necessarily affect us, which we'll look at in a second.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have 100 events per year, 65 people per event, gets us to 6,500. And we know it's one person per one transaction per person. So we know we have 6,500 transactions per year.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So I'm sure you can convert that to seconds for me, Alex, right?
Okay, give me a second.
Sure.
Okay, per year, no, 365. Divided by, I got like 0.012.
Okay, let me just double check you. Divided by 60 divided by 60. Oh. You got what?
I messaged 0.012.
Okay, I didn't get mine, but we'll trust you on this one. So we have 0.012 transactions.
0.012. Okay, yeah.
There you go. So we have 0.12 transactions per second.
That's-
Now, let's look at the size of these transactions.
Mhm.
This is a donation. So obviously we'll have a donor and a recipient. We'll have the amount. But I think generally, we're going to be dealing with pretty small transactions here.
Mhm.
So let's say any transaction is, and we'll say 25 kilobytes per transaction. So that gets us to, if we do 0.012 by 25,
Oh,
that
multiple.
only, so that only gets us to 0.3 kilobytes
Yeah,
per second.
31. Yeah.
However, have you noticed what we forgot, Alex? What are we looking to do with this blockchain? Not just track donations, but also the use of them.
Okay.
So what types of donations or campaigns does this company do? Are they typically charitable?
Yes. They give this money to sick kids, this kind of companies.
Okay. So do you think we could say per event, there may be on average 10 transactions that distribute the event's amount raised
Um,
on average, or less or more?
okay. Cancer. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, let's imagine something. They have 7 companies, 7 partners.
Okay, so maybe we could say 7 on average.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we have 7 disbursement transactions
Yes.
per event, and we have 65 per year, equals 7 times 65, 455 disbursement transactions per year.
Yes.
Now, these are probably going to be a little bit bigger, right? Because these are the transactions that we need to provide information to the user. So we may need to have a little bit more metadata than just the pure donation transaction. So let's say these are twice as big, 50 kilobytes per transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get me the same thing we did last time, Alex?
Yes.
Or everyone else can also, of course, do this too.
I'm just actually got a question. Why would
Sure.
you necessarily have to put the metadata on chain?
Well, I had the same thought as I spoke that. So
It's okay
we
to
don't
think
have-
out loud, so as long as everybody can hear it.
All right. I got this really bizarre number.
I just didn't want to make it too easy on Alex with the same transaction size.
Wait a second. Okay.
Okay, so that's your number 8.6 roughly.
Yeah, but it's epsilon minus 4. So let's see. You see at the end, not epsilon, but e.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, so
e
we're dealing with a pretty
4,
small number.
Yes. Yes.
So we have
Wait a
minus
second,
4 still.
I'm just trying to convert.
We're dealing with something like this. So very little transactional load here. So if we were to add this number with this number, we're still dealing with a very minimal transactional load for this solution. So we can say that for this specific company, this is a viable blockchain use case. What about governance, Alex? And the rest of you too. How could we govern the updates to such a system? Remember, our purpose is to track the use of funds, mostly in charitable giving contexts.
The participants want to participate. I mean, like meritocracy. I don't think so.
Right. I think that what you're getting at is we definitely want our participants to be involved, and we actually don't want the company to be involved much at all, because the company is who we're trying to track here.
Right. But like, let's say from both sides, the recipients also want to track. Why not? Or
True.
not really.
True. So we have donors and recipients, and there may be some merit-based elements to this system, but I think generally what we're saying is both of these participant types should be participating in these transactions or in these updates. I'm sorry. So we'll call that pretty liquid. Now, what about a token?
I don't think we need any token here.
And why not? Just to get your thought.
Because we're not selling anything. I mean, like we just move money from one pocket to another. There is no increase or decrease in the economy, or what do you think? I don't know. This is my opinion.
Okay. So because we're more so looking to track the use of funds, Mark and Meyer, what do you guys think about this one? Experts in the room, do you think this would be a case for a token, or not required?
But the final users, they could, I mean, like doctors and different like researchers, yeah, it could provoke some economic activities.
Exactly. I think you'd attach this to existing chain infrastructures as an auditing function.
Okay.
Right, as a parallel system. So when certain types of companies are doing token raises or donation fundraising programs, and they want to promote themselves as being honest, good folks that are going to do right by you with your donations, they plug into this system too. And it monitors every transaction that they use that gets done with them on the blockchain, and makes it then auditable by both third parties and the end user who originally sent the money. Interesting.
How would we support the infrastructure in a system like that, Mark? If this is just a purely audit-based service and we're not necessarily catering to customers or recipients, who do we get to support it?
KPMG, PwC, Deloitte.
And what's their incentive?
They're auditors. It's their business. Their incentive is it makes them better at their business and provides a whole new product line for them to start contributing to the crypto world.
Okay, yeah, that's a good solution. So because there are people whose job it is out there to do this, if we provide a solution, they're probably going to enjoy adopting it. And that's a pretty common theme in lots of blockchain solutions out there. They stand to improve legacy systems and help people do their jobs better. So if we can design solutions that truly fit and truly work, there's pretty strong curve of adoption.
What do you think the people's motivation was when Satoshi launched Bitcoin? It wasn't to get rich, I'll tell you that.
Well, one could argue it was many things, but what point are you getting at, Mark?
The vested interest when Bitcoin launched was that it was cool. It was interesting. It was doing something that had never been done before.
Right.
That was the only motivation for it going up and running.
Right. So the same thing applies to people and jobs today. want to do something new and cool just because it's new and cool and maybe a little better way to do it.
Well, obviously, you've
awesome.
got this auditing platform up there, and it's Joe's accounting company of Des Moines, Iowa, proposes to a company that he'll do his auditing for all of its donations. And then along comes Deloitte and says, no, we'll do it. If you're the company, which one do you want as your auditor?
Right.
That's why Deloitte will run this, because they can. And
That's
they can
true.
put their brand on it, charge more than the other guy does for it, and it costs them almost nothing to run it.
Right.
I mean, what's the transaction flow in this thing? It's diddly.
Yep, it is. Well, cool. Alex, we're at the end of this. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to share, or comments or questions to jot down on this little card here for you?
Not at this moment. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Of course. Thanks for sharing, Alex. That was great. Now, I know we only have 12 minutes left, so maybe we won't do a full dive into any of the other concepts, but were there any other use cases that anyone brought that they wanted to discuss? I think we may have missed one that was mentioned back in the beginning of the session. Fateh, you had shared this, a global disease surveillance system, which provides alerts to people in different levels, like wear a mask for X days, better not to use public transport today, it's better to stay home.
Oh, I love it. Environmental load weather.
So since this is an interesting one, I'll go ahead and create a little card for us just so that we can get these thoughts down. So we'll call this health surveillance just for now. By Fateh. And let's go ahead and get these deleted. So, 1 second. All right. So the nature of your idea, Fateh, just catching up here, is to what? Why does your idea work better with a blockchain, or what does a blockchain do to make this idea better? Provide transparency, right? And you hit the nail on the head with the last piece of your net message here, which is that it takes politics out of the equation, which is that we have an unbiased, also decentralized, but more importantly, unbiased, call it a surveillance or call it a reporting system for public health. We're seeing with this COVID pandemic that the interests of a government are severely disrupting public health. See it in the United States, and fortunately, Canada's been doing a much better job generally. But this is a real issue. So we could say the nature of this idea is to create objective, provable, would you call it public health reporting? Public health monitoring, let's call that, and tracking. So what makes this innovative is that until now, we didn't have a trustworthy system of data distribution like this. So we can say that it uses a blockchain to enable secure, transparent distribution of important public health information. And governments and institutions can't get their hands on that information or those recommendations. And that's the innovative nature of this. So I like that. It's timely, of course. So we only have 8 minutes left, and I don't want to run over time. I want to respect everyone's schedules. So let's just choose one of these. And I think for this example, I think governance is the most interesting aspect of this to talk about. So let's skip the transactional load and the token question and just look at governance for this example. So Fateh, how would you govern such a health surveillance or health monitoring system? Who would be in charge of voting on updates for the system? Or what types of updates could we need?
I believe an on-chain type of governance would be appropriate.
Mm-hmm. So
And
on-chain voting.
Yeah. And what else? It's absolutely decentralized, so there's that.
I like it. Which means no centralized control.
Yeah.
By the politics.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about actual who gets to participate in on-chain votes? Is it a full liquid democracy or is it merit-based? What do you think?
I'm gonna say merit-based because the science is gonna have the final say, like the doctors and the rate of the numbers, like rate of infection or the number of like the R that everyone's talking about. It's a statistical index. So I guess everything can be like written into the system. So it's the ones who are credible are the facts and figures. They have to, yeah. So.
Okay, I like that. That's a really good insight. So we can say that this is going to be an on-chain merit-based governance system.
Yeah. Awesome.
Were there any other interesting pieces of this that you thought about that you wanted to share? I know you had a message in here with some recommendations like wearing a mask, not using public transport today.
Yeah, we can have a stream of information for the public, but it requires the government to be on board with this. Otherwise, it cannot like. We have this thing in Canada called Amber Alerts that are run, I think, by the police and the government, of course.
Right.
If we can have some type of alerts that do that for this, it's going to be the way to do. But I'm not sure if it's doable. But something like that, yeah.
So using the emergency alert system in all of our smartphones that only governments and at least in the U.S. Congress can approve.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know how practical or viable it's going to be.
Could you notify people just on using a standard software notification, a push notification? Yeah. Why would we need the emergency system for this? I'm just curious.
Because I don't know, because we might have to be able to take decisions much faster than this in the future. Because what I've heard is that we're going to have many more pandemics coming in the future. So the urgency might force us to be that way. I don't know. It's such a dystopian kind of thinking, but
It is. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, I like that you're thinking about this, Fateh. And am I pronouncing it right, by the way?
My name is Fateh, but Fateh. You can shorten to Fateh, or you can just call me Fate.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Good to know. Well, it's interesting that you bring this up because what we're going to talk about with the Kevlar project tomorrow is actually a pretty cool identity system that would, in theory, enable this type of health surveillance and in the case of COVID, contact tracing type of system. So if this is interesting to you, definitely come tomorrow and and join us.
I'll be here. Thank you.
What I love about Fateh's suggestion is that you effectively can now issue local, and when I say local, I mean just your little neighborhood of your world. It wouldn't be like Toronto wide. It would say, no, the downtown southeast core of Toronto is currently a red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because there's this many infected people in that zone.
Yeah, you can nip it in the bud. Like,
yeah.
Right.
So you get like a weather report that says, these are places you don't want to go today.
Yeah, it can be a disease control tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That works.
I think this is Giannis is GM here. No, GM is just GM. So GM, that's a great question, which is how do you plan to overcome the challenge of personal patient information or confidentiality of medical records? And that's a great question that we will answer on tomorrow's session. So I hope you join us because that's an interesting piece of this that we'll touch on, but I can't really easily answer in a minute. So hope you'll join us too, GM, whoever you are. And that just gets us about to the end of our session today. Thank you, Alex and Fateh and Wanya and Kevin for sharing. This was awesome. Happy to share these slides with you if anyone wants them for any reason. But this is just about the end of our session. So does anyone have any questions for today? Other than yours, GM, of course.
Nate, thank you very much. Everybody else, Marco, everybody else that came from all of the different areas to join the session, blocks. We really appreciate everything that you're doing. This is Tom, by the way. I'm going to sign us all out. We'll see you tomorrow for the follow-up on this, which sounds amazing, actually. I've read through a little bit of it, so I think it's fantastic. You guys really need to show up. Thank you again, Nate and team. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone else, for joining.